Kidu in Bhutan can be defined in simplest words as the king takes care of the welfare of its citizens. However, most of us are not aware about the history of Kidu in Bhutan. So to talk more about Kidu system in Bhutan, we have with us historian writer Dasho Karma Ura. Thank you, Dasho, for your time.
Lasso.
To begin with, tell us briefly about the origin of Kidu system in Bhutan.
Kidu, the Druk mechanisms would have existed long ago in Bhutan, as in any society, because they have to address disruptions in livelihood of the people. So disruptions and emergencies, disasters arise from such sources as epidemics amongst human beings, or illnesses and deaths on a larger abnormal cases amongst livestock, or in extreme cases also from social stresses leading to wars, violences. So these are the normal origins of sudden distresses in societies. So there are always mechanisms to address that. I am talking in general about the concept of response in terms of Kidu. So in our country, in the midst of history, amongst communities and villages, this has also led, meaning the need for Kidu has also led to social organizations to solve problems of this nature. So you see many rich institutions which are not necessarily codified in laws, but they exist even as phenomena bigger than laws, as social customs, customs of dealing with death, illnesses, epidemics, wars and their consequences, etc. So I am talking about really so-called community organizations and institutions that has helped us tide through occasions of need for Kidu. Now beyond that, when our country got unified under the great leader Zhabdrung Ngawang, in his legal decree that has been written in 1731, it was written before but we probably lost the text, but in 1731 Desimi Pham, the 10th Duke Desi of Bhutan, wrote it down, and in that we can see three specific references of Kidu. The first one he says is that there are food commodities that has been raised through taxations, and they were stockpiled in zongs, and the text mentions that these should be distributed to the public upon the approval of the Gongsa, that is himself the Duke Desi, wherever it is needed amongst in the country. So that is the first sort of livelihood addressing through these food granaries maintained in the zone. Second interesting point Desimi Pham mentions, originating from Zhabdrung Rinpoche, is that the Kidu, or the welfare of the population, is dependent very much on the quality of the officials from the Zongpens right down to the Dungpas, and there is a correlation in the competence and quality and the attitude, motivations of these officials, and how they resolve Kidus, meaning that this was one of the main functions of the civil servants, in order to alleviate hardships, sorrows, difficulties, emergencies of amongst the population. The third interesting notion of Kidu, or the concept of Kidu, that occurs in this important text is that the Kidu, or the welfare of the people, is derived from the verdicts of the officials and judges. Officials also acted as judges in those days, as well as the fairness of the taxation system. And the taxes were of two kinds, as you know. The first is the commodity taxes, in-kind taxes, and second one is the labor taxes. And the labor taxes were clearly of two kinds. One is they are known as together as dokel ula, and one is the delivery of official loads across the country. And the second one is mobilization of labor for common infrastructure that needed to be maintained in the country, such as irrigation channel, roads, bridges, construction of zongs, lakangs, and so forth. So these are the historical origins of Kidu, but in modern times, since 1960, since the third king's, in fact not even third king, we are going back to the first king, the reduction of the taxes and food taxes and labor taxes and other commodity taxes became a main concern since the first king, and was continued vigorously by the second king. But in the third king's time, it took a special prominence, and the special prominence of Kidu system was pivoted on land, making land available to the public. So we get this in the 28th session of the National Assembly in 1968. Sort of Kidu, addressing Kidu through land allocation was started. And the Home Minister, as you know, in the past was also called Kidu Lempo, sort of. So it became intimately linked to the land distribution. And in the fourth king's time, Kidu of various kind, but also land resettlement became very prominent. And then the notion of Kidu got highly diversified as time went on. And in 2012, we also passed a Kidu Fund Act, actually. And I think the reign, the golden, should we say, the priceless reign of the current revered His Majesty the King, now the Kidu, has covered almost all key elements of our country. For example, there is health service Kidu, scholarship Kidu, land Kidu, citizenship Kidu, elderly people's nursing home Kidu, Kidu for spiritual people, including provision of retreat centers. So it has covered almost every aspect of sphere of our life, and it has become, as you know now, most visible and significant and profound in this pandemic period through two major instruments.
Yes, and then if you could also tell us about the virtue of Kidu system in Bhutan.
You use the word virtue, and I think there is a chance for confusion, so I should define it loosely. Virtue is something which is in accordance with a natural order of things. So sort of, if you go against that, it is tending to be a lack of virtue. Virtue also can be understood as that system, traits and behavior amongst human beings which contributes to collective well-being, happiness and prosperity. Now, coming down from this conceptual meanings, we can understand the notion of virtue in our context as cultivation of sentiments, traits and human behavior that leads to collective welfare. And what are those? Those are amply elaborated in Buddhist motivational theory much before Western political science, and these are sympathy, and that to recognize other human beings also are entitled to some degree of welfare, happiness and well-being. And beyond that, not only recognizing cognitively but also now emotionally feeling the drive to do something about it, and that is called empathy. But lastly, it flowers in terms of the cultivation and application of compassion, which is premised on the dissolution of selfishness, that is also brought about by the negation of the hardened notions of self, individuality, individualism, etc. So these are the virtues, and the epitome or the embodiment of sympathy, empathy and compassion in our society is His Majesty the King. He is both a modern but also in a timeless way a Bodhisattva king. But I mean, it is not only leaders, but it has to cascade down to all of us, you know, and so that we share the concerns, hardships of other, and we echo the sort of problems that needs to be resolved by any possible means and resources that we each of us have. We can contribute labor, we can provide social support, we can donate to some degree, you know, without sacrificing our welfare, because those of us who have the utility of the resources we have is not as much to us as it is to those who have far less.
Of course, there are so many virtues of Kidu system, but are there also dangers of Kidu system to a society or its people?
This is an important question that will afflict any welfare system, because the welfare system is designed as a group, as a collective level, but all collective things, all common resources, all public utilities and infrastructures are non-exclusionary. That means it does not easily stop people who do not need it, you know, because, and that prevention of misuse of the welfare system depends very much on the conscience of the individuals who don't need it, you know, and the question of free riders, you know, questions of not being able to assess that the resources which you capitalize out of welfare system could have gone to somebody else who are far more in far critical need. So this should pinch conscience greatly for amongst those who are able, who are wealthier, who are richer, who are more resourceful. Don't claim it, you know, don't claim it. And if you also fall below the comfort livelihood, you will receive the same Kidu one day. I mean, it is not necessary for you to grab and exploit it, you know. So this is the danger, but you ask only the risk and the danger, and of course there is always the larger danger, that citizens must also understand. And this kind of large cash transfers requiring billions and billions today has been mobilized due to the sole bodhisattva action and motivation of His Majesty the King, much before a government and society has thought about it. You know, he has saved it, obviously for some other purpose, such as security of the nation, such as the training of Desung and provision of the housing and training centers of Desung. Now this is being diverted in these critical times to Kidu system. So we must not take it for granted that these resources have no alternative use, no? But we had to, His Majesty had to resort to this resource for lack of alternatives. And we must, all of us must realize what is being sacrificed. And then only we will appreciate the preciousness of resources.
Druk Gyalpo's relief Kidu has benefited thousands of Bhutanese, especially during the pandemic. Yes. So if you could tell us briefly about Druk Gyalpo's relief Kidu.
The Druk Gyalpo's relief Kidu was instituted, as you all know, from the 1st of April 2020. And this was a very quick, decisive response that His Majesty initiated and rooted it with very good organizational delivery system in a very efficient way. I would like to share with you that as the pandemic raised its toxic, destructive head at that time, it was not widespread at that time. Many leaders could not estimate the devastation it would cause over such a long time. Nobody, not in this country, not outside. And therefore, all the response system that they designed fell short, and they kind of instituted steps as they went along. But because of that, it had suffered from loopholes, weaknesses, short-sightedness, and due to that reason, people lost their lives along the way, which is the most precious things which each of us have. All of us have only our life. It is a tribute, and this is no, I don't say this lightly, because I read regional affairs, international leadership, and how they perform. It's a tribute that, in contrast and comparison to all of them, His Majesty, by 24th of March 2020, had come to his own insightful conclusion that this pandemic will go on for a long time, and that it will affect a large number of people, that there will be major disruptions in the economy, especially with reference to tourism, manufacturing, trading, hoteling, and so forth. All the people had a vague notion that there will be some disruption, but not on the scale, the depth, and the duration it would last. So it is truly a mark of the insight and the wisdom of His Revered Majesty that by 1st of April he instituted this Druk Gyalpo's relief system, funded out of the money which he had saved for the security of this nation in the security fund. So after 14 months of long haul we have passed through, if you look around, everybody's life is normal in Bhutan. Everybody's health is more or less as it was on that day. We have only lost a single life so far by law of average, we should have lost far more lives by now. What is this illusion of normality coming? Where is it coming from? It's coming because of the Druk Gyalpo's relief Kidu that has fueled optimism, hope, normalcy, despite the economy facing, well, it has hit the rock in many sectors actually. And so it is because of Druk Gyalpo's relief Kidu, and as of today, two types of Druk Gyalpo's relief has been broadly offered in response to the pandemic. But I reminded Sonam earlier that there are many normal streams of Kidu I mentioned to you, but these two special one in response to COVID are the allowances given to those who have lost jobs, those who could not continue with their normal life because they have no normal livelihood due to loss of job. So that amounts to about 45,000 unemployed people and 16,000 children. So total of about 65,000 people have got these benefits, monthly allowances. The second type of Kidu, which has cost us far more in financial terms, is the relief given to debtors. In the last 14 months, about 11 billion has been spent in terms of giving debt relief to individual debtors across the country. Now most people are ambiguous, and the ambiguity arises because they have a misconception that it might be going to large debtors of successful businessmen. So this is a misperception, and I should say a line or two on this. Then we have about 160,000 households in this country. The number of debtors in this country is nearly 1,40,000. So it is, as the number of debtors are as many as the number of households in this country, and it is therefore a sort of very egalitarian relief. Everybody's debt stress had been mitigated through this process. Furthermore, the financial sector is a key mediator and pillar of the modern economy, and if there are no sort of debt payment through the His Majesty's Kidu system, the financial banks institutions will sink, and if that sinks, everything else will be also exposed to extreme fragility and perhaps collapse. So it is in the interest of our country as a whole also to sort of provide this Druk Gyalpo's relief for debtors. So I hope that I have been able to give a sort of multi-angle perspective on these two Kidu systems. But overall, I think the fact that we are able to go on with our life as usual, that we are not affected by fatalities of the kind that is that has affected negatively all over the world, is a tribute to the special quality of leadership of this country.
Yes, and as we end our program, my last question would be, how should a citizen respect the Kidu system of the country?
Yeah, as I said, I think respect is sort of some kind of respect sometimes evokes authoritarianism, you know, that somebody is high, somebody is low, and this is a structural one. So I think sometimes respect may be misunderstood, but what I want to say is that all of us are citizens, and our livelihood, our welfare, our happiness is dependent on good systems of the country, good institutions, good leaders of our country. So, and whenever we are blessed with extraordinary leadership, we should be thankful that this is a sort of unexpected occurrence in the world. We should be thankful, and we should therefore think that this is this kind of solidarity, this kind of widespread support we have enjoyed is not accident. It's not accident in a way. It comes out of the strivings. It comes out of the good motivation of some profound individual, you know, and little bit of it should be mirrored in our own life also. So we should, to that extent, we should also try to lead ourselves towards profundity, towards wisdom, you know, in the image of good leaders we have. So, in other words, we should kind of become enlightened individuals and citizenship for this unique, for this inspiring nation on the planet.
Yes, Dasho, thank you very much for your time and sharing your insight with us.
Thank you.